Hello everyone, hello Tapmi, good to be here. I see a lot of women in the room, so I'm privileged and honored to represent all of you here. I'm Ranjani, and today I'm going to be talking about leading with grace, how women leaders can thrive at work and life. He called out this really nice quote about how it's taken us more than half a century for all the prerequisite conditions to come together, from the raw computing power to the evolution of the algorithms to the large-scale data, all of which converging at the dawn of 2010. But it's taken us less than half a decade for unleashing the power all of these capabilities has brought together. In a very few short years, generative AI has changed the way our lives are lived. So as we build on this legacy, it's a good time for us to take a pause, step back and think about how are women poised to lead in the age of AI. So let's start with a quick question for the audience in the room here. If you could go to the next slide. So while he navigates to the next slide, quick question for the folks in the room. How many of you have known of a woman who has dropped out of work for any reasons whatsoever? Any quick show of hands? And let's talk about what are the reasons, right? Perhaps it's a lack of opportunities after they've taken a break, or probably it's because of additional caregiver responsibilities, or is it more because of lack of mentors or role models? Now it's a lot of these issues and more, right? And these are very real issues that women face. Now I want to talk about how this looks like for women as they move through their workforce. This is from one of the surveys for Indian women. If you look at it, it starts with almost 34% of freshers. Now as you move through the funnel, you see that it drops down to around 26% at the junior level, 18% at a mid-senior level, and only around 11% at a leadership level. Now this decline is very representative and highlights the challenges which we just spoke about, right? So let's talk about what causes it and how do you address this. I want to bring this back to AI, right? In the space of AI worldwide, only 22% of AI professionals are women. Now up to 74-75% of business leaders truly believe and acknowledge that it's critical to have more women in AI leadership. Why? Because it helps you, for example, to mitigate gender bias in AI. Interestingly, what you also notice is only 46% of the women leaders are confident about their abilities in AI leadership as opposed to 61% of men. Now, that also indicates a confidence gap. Now, in order to address these disparities, I want to introduce this framework of we can and we could, right? We can is an external phenomenon. Think of the environment. Do we have a nurturing environment which allows women to thrive, right? That's the we can framework. We could framework rather. Now we can, on the other hand, is internal. It's what we as individuals think and believe. Do we have the self-belief? Do we have the confidence to think that we can achieve our potential, right? Now both of this needs to happen for us to be able to thrive. Now let's talk about a couple of these scenarios in the environment, right? I want to introduce you to two concepts. How many of you have heard of this? Either of these concepts, the tallest poppy or the broken rung. So let's talk about each, right? The tallest poppy refers to this syndrome where the folks who stand out get cut. So this syndrome occurs when high achievers have a tendency to get cut down by their peers. And this survey also highlighted that up to this largely targets women, right? And women are cut down by their peers, who could be their managers or who could be their peers, mostly because of workplace culture or jealousy. They did the survey with over 87% of the respondents, and this is like globally, right? Over 100 countries acknowledge that this happens at their workplaces. Now the emotional toll this has on personal lives is huge, and it results in discouragement of high achievers. Addressing something like this is critical for us as we look towards building supportive and inclusive workplaces, right? So this is one. Another concept I want to introduce you to is what the McKinsey called the broken rung. Now, the broken rung phenomenon is what happens when women strive to get to the challenges that women face when they strive to get to the first management position. Research shares that women have a harder time getting to the first level management position when compared to the male counterparts. Now, this results in a gap in the leadership pipeline, right, which gets you to leadership roles. So on the left, you see a chart of about how the women leadership falls from around 41% to less than 21% when it goes to the C-suite. And the chart on the right shows that out of 100 men who get promoted into leadership positions, only 79 to 85% of the women get to, and less so if you're a woman of color. Now, these disparities and highlights which I'm calling out is essential for us to acknowledge and then close out for us to build out a culture which nurtures women in leadership. Now, while we spoke about all of these external factors, what I do want to leave you with is a clear framework. What I want to leave you with is a framework which you can take back. I see a lot of young women in the room today. Think about a framework which you can take back, which allows you to get to your potential, right? I call this the GRACE framework. Growth, resilience, advocacy, community, and empowerment. Let's talk about each of these, and I'll try to share a few real stories around each of them. Starting with growth, right? Growth is, I believe, a crucial part of the GRACE framework. Now, I want to tell you a story of this mid-management woman that I once mentored. Let's call her Swati, right? Swati is engineering leader. She had 15 plus years of experience. She was leading engineering teams as a director of engineering, and she had taken a break owing to personal reasons. Now, after a sabbatical, she decided to get back to work. She identified a niche, she did a bunch of certifications, and she started interviewing. Yet she reached out to me confused if she was taking the right call. I was confused because she had already played a similar role, so I asked her why. Apparently, her husband had recommended that she step down a level and apply to senior manager roles so that she could convert the offer faster. Understandably hurt at being undermined, she was questioning whether she was actually taking the right call. Do not let anyone else dictate what you should and shouldn't be doing. Growth needs to be what you define for yourself, and that comes from intention and focus, right? Upskilling is no longer a good to have in the age of AI. One of my favorite quotes is from Alice in Wonderland. It says, if you don't know where you're going, any road can take you there. So be very clear about defining where your North Star is. The second thing I want to talk about is deep work, right? In the age of AI, it's essential for you to find your mind, space, and time for you to do your best work. For example, I work in Pomodoros, which is like 25-minute slots, during which I have expectations set with my family in terms of not being disturbed at that point. And finally, creating evidence, right? It's very important for us to do versus to plan, to demonstrate your real abilities with actual outcomes. And I believe that by sitting in the driver's seat of growth, you put yourself in a place where you have multiple choices. And freedom of choice is always a good thing. Moving on, let's talk about resilience. So almost a decade ago, I realized I was pregnant when I joined my first job. When I joined, not my first job, one of my early jobs. It was 1 month into the role. And in a few short months, weeks ahead of my due date, I woke up with this splitting headache, and my blood pressure monitor threw up an error. My husband was extremely worried, and he insisted that I go to the hospital before I go to work. So with my laptop bag in hand, I went to the hospital, and that probably saved my life. My blood pressure was so out of range that the doctor was surprised that I wasn't hallucinating. She admitted me to the ICU, and I got progressively worse within a day. They warned us of multiple organ failure if I insisted and if I did not deliver immediately. I fought back, wanting to give my kid a fighting chance. It's a miracle, honestly, that we both made it out okay. But I know that story wouldn't have ended the way it did if I did not have the medical support that I had, or the univocal support of my leaders at that point in time. My manager checked in with my family constantly, making sure that our insurance covered our ballooning expenses. My skip level manager visited me when I got back home and trusted me to do my job 4 months after I got back to work, after my maternity leave. I stayed there for 7+ years, showing up every single day, wanting to do my best because they had placed their trust in me when I wanted it the most. Resilience can happen in multiple ways. First of all, as a working woman, we end up taking a large majority of the mental workload of running a household. Delegate. If it's not your core value, if it's not a deal breaker, ask for help. 2, outsource. Outsource outcomes versus tasks. For example, it is in my family, it is important. I take up the responsibility of making sure that my kid is ready, but my husband's responsibility is to drop her and pick her up from school. So outsource outcomes. That way the mental load is not necessarily on one person. And most importantly, prioritize, right? Manage your energy and well-being. Because like my mom says, a happy person makes a happy mother. I want to talk about advocacy. It's an interesting topic, right? I want to share the story of a true ally. Let's call this person Raja Ram. This is Raja Ram's story. I was a rookie manager around 20 years ago, and I had a women employee on my team. We had both grown through the ranks together, and I treated her more as a friend than an employee. One day, after her 3rd child, she came to me wanting to quit. She was struggling with the cost of daycare and just the financial burden of it all. I asked her if she would consider going part-time before deciding to quit. She agreed. Unfortunately, there was no policy around this at that point in time. So I spoke to the HR and to the VP, and after some initial skepticism, they decided to trial out a 6-month period. We adjusted a compensation, and at the end of 6 months, we extended the trial. After a few years, I got back to India. She continued with that company, right? We earned her trust by giving her that option when none existed, and she paid back with loyalty back to the company. Many a times it's easy as managers to step back and say, we don't have a policy for this, or blame it on the HR. But for us, it's very crucial for managers to step up, to break that broken rung that we spoke about, to develop empathy and meet the team where they need the help to be able to drive to their potential. So seek out allies, seek out sponsors, and if you can, step up and be an ally yourself. And most of all, put yourself out there. Something I very strongly believe in is growth lies at the edge of discomfort. Community. So a long time ago, in one of my early roles, I realized that I spent most of my time with the same set of people, right? So one day, out of the blue, what I decided is to ping one of my site leaders, telling him about my interests. He ended up connecting me with a couple of others, and that ended up being one of the most transformative parts of my career. I joined a couple of communities, one, Women in AI, and another with Startup Acceleration. That way, I ended up meeting new leaders and opportunities down the line, a few of which became lifelong mentors. A majority of folks approach mentoring quite wrong. Asking someone you hardly know, can you be my mentor, has a very low chance of converting. Mentors and sponsors have had a disproportionate impact in my career. They've put me in rooms I did not belong and gave me a voice before I knew how to use mine. So how do you go about finding your board? That I truly believe happens by giving before taking. By not just collecting LinkedIn connections and visiting cards, but when truly believing in building long-term relationships. By being curious about what's their journey without necessarily looking at it as a requirement. By raising your hands for opportunities which is beyond what's beneath your nose, right? Networking, I believe, happens when you don't need to make one. Networking is best when you don't have to do it, right? So I think that's the thing I want to leave you with, right? Seek out a community so that over a period of time, you foster an environment which makes you feel valued. And finally, the last one I want to leave you with is empowerment. In one of my early roles, I got promoted twice in a span of 3 years, both of which were a result of an outcome of a crisis. Once, when there was an urgent backfill, and another time when there was an org change. Many a times you would be in scenarios where you wonder if it's okay to ask for that raise or for that promotion, or even whether you're 100% qualified to reach out to that opportunity where you may not be completely qualified, but do it anyways, right? You will be in scenarios where you wonder if you are enough, where you will probably be the only one who looks like you in the room, and wonder, why will people listen to me anyway? I would say put yourself out there anyways, right? Many a times, I have to speak harder to be heard. I might be constantly interrupted and sometimes ignored as well. Biases exist. Humans, even though not intentional, can be biased. What do you do in such scenarios, right? Two things. One, awareness drives action. One of my mentors called this out. When faced with unconscious bias, display curiosity and probe deeper. Ask them, why is it that they think the way that they think, right? Bias usually isn't intentional. Two, assert yourself. For the longest time, I thought it wasn't right for me to speak up about myself. But if the other person isn't assuming goodwill, it's okay for you to call out what you bring to the table, and more importantly, why you are at the table. With that, I want to leave you with this again. Let's together commit to leading with grace, with growth, resilience, advocacy, community, and empowerment. And with all of this, I truly believe each of us can work towards achieving our best potential. And finally, I want to leave you with a quote from one of my favorite authors, Neil Gaiman: strive to make good art, and maybe somewhere in the next year, you will surprise yourself. Thank you.